anybody talk to Mary Ann? Yeah, she. Good morning. It is 8:01 a.m. and a quorum is present, and the meeting has been duly called and posted in the time and manner required by law. Before we begin, do we have any members of the public who would like to address the board regarding the posted agenda items? Hearing none, we will proceed to our workshop, and our first up is progress measures. So, Kim Callison, I'll invite you to come up and
I'm on my way.
somebody, I don't know who's coming.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's a slow start this morning. Good morning. As always, it's nice to be here this morning to talk about progress measures and how our students are progressing academically. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. As you know, our North Star goal is to have 80% of our students in A and B campuses by 2026. And so in thinking about that and looking at how we're doing, I want to start out today with just some considerations as we look at the data. Today's data dig is going to be a little bit more extensive than what we've done in the past. First of all, our reading and language arts assessments are a little bit different than last year. So as we look at that data, I just want to make sure that I put that out there. We are now starting our third year of preparing our students for STAR 2.0, which, as you guys know, is a more comprehensive assessment. And so we have 2 years worth of questions that we can use that have been released by the state and passages, and so we're incorporating those more and more just so that we can ensure validity and using those that we know are from the state and not necessarily district generated. So we've made some shifts in our RLA to have passages and questions that are STAR generated. Our data analysis, typically, when I present to you progress measures, we just look at our years where we have board goals, which is 3rd grade and 8th grade. But today we're going to look at every grade level, just so to give you a more comprehensive idea of where we're at. And we're going to look at compared to last year, as well as first 6 weeks, or sorry, man, that was a flashback, first 9 weeks, the second 9 weeks. And so we'll look a little bit more extensively at that. Couple of things to consider for math. This year, all of our elementary schools are using the same curriculum, so that is great. Gives us a nice look. We don't have to look at 2 different groups. Our STAR 2.0 items continue to be our source of concern and focus because those are different, and that includes writing at every single grade level. In mathematics, that includes text entry, and what we're finding is that those are the questions that our kids struggle the most with. So we're continuing to add those into our assessments and then working with our teachers so that they are doing that on their own campus assessments as well. And then lastly, science, just as a reminder, science has all new standards this year, all new texts, and they have new materials this year. So in science, we're spending a lot of time just learning as teachers as well as students because of those changes. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But those are just things that I wanted to share with you as we get started this morning. All right, so we're going to hop into 3rd grade reading. And in 3rd grade reading, we do have a board goal. It is that by June of 2025, that we will have our students in reading 3rd grade meeting expectations. Will increase that from 52 to 56%. And what you'll see, so just so you know from here on, the blue is this 9 weeks. The red is last year at this same time. So you can see we dropped in 3rd grade. And of course, I was very worried about this when I looked at it and kind of went to digging into the test and talking to teachers. And one of the things that I want to point out for 3rd grade reading that we've done a little bit differently this year in 3rd and 4th grade at the request of teachers is something that is new for our 3rd graders is that they have what's called a paired passage. So our 3rd graders have to, and this is all grade levels in RLA now, they read 2 passages together. So they may read a fiction piece and a poem, or an informational piece and a drama. And then they have to answer questions about them individually and answer questions about them together, like comparing the two, contrasting the two. That is very difficult to do. And what we have found, this started in 3rd grade for the first time with STAR 2.0, and that's where our kids struggle in the area of reading. And so our teachers asked us, they said, we have done that on the benchmark, but we've never done it first semester. Can we add that in? And so we added that in. So this is a much more complex text than what we used last year on the assessment. So I feel like that is why we have a little bit of a decrease. It's also a different group of kids. So let's look at the same group of kids. If you look at 3rd grade reading, so this is the same group that are currently sitting in 3rd grade. First 9 weeks is in green. Second 9 weeks is in blue still. You can see that we have a little bit of a decrease, but not very much. So that's where those kids are performing at. And so as we look at them as a group, we're going to really look, as we move into our benchmark, we're going to look closely at how did they do on that paired passage. Do we see an increase from what we just took to 3rd 9 weeks? We'll also look, of course, at writing. Writing continues to be a struggle, and revising and editing. So you can see, just kind of going back, we dropped quite a bit from last year, but when we look at the same group of kids, the same cohort of kids, that is not quite as significant. 4th grade, or 3rd grade math, happily, our goal, our district board goal is to increase to 55% at the meets level. You can see we have surpassed that already. On this particular assessment, we were at 57% meets compared to 55% at this same time last year. So we are pleased with that. We're on the right trajectory, and we've already hopefully met that goal. Of course, our STAR test and our benchmark is a longer assessment, which sometimes is more challenging. So we'll look at that at benchmark time as well. When you look at those same 3rd graders from first 9 weeks to second 9 weeks, you can see that we do have some increases there. Excited, especially at that meets category, where we went from 39% the first 9 weeks to 57% meets the second 9 weeks. So very pleased at that. So it's nice to look at this data both as a comparison achievement last year to this year, but also look at that same cohort of kids. In 4th grade reading, we saw once again a drop, but more complex text. We have a huge jump in the percentage that students have to get meets and masters in 4th grade. There's a big jump. Every single grade level, every single content area, the percentage to approach meets and masters is different at every single grade level, and it changes every year. So some grade levels are quite a bit higher, and we do see a marked increase between 3rd and 4th grade. But when you look at the same cohort of kids, sorry, went backwards. When you look at the same group of kids, you can see that, yes, they moved backwards a little bit, but we're still doing kind of where they were at that first 9 weeks with a much more complex test. Once again, the first 9 weeks, they read fiction. They typically do better of that by and large. And now we're moving into more science and social studies. In fact, this 4th grade passage is about a salamander in the Edwards Aquifer. And they don't really know how to pronounce salamander, so they struggled a little bit with that. But we see that when they took it on STAR and when we had it on benchmark as well last year. 4th grade math, from last year to this year, we can see some increases there. Once again, we're really pleased with that. So we're moving in the right trajectory for math in elementary and 4th grade. And when you look at these same groups of kids, you can see that they're staying about where they were last 9 weeks. So we want to make sure that we're really digging into that. One of the things that in math, every 9 weeks, the content is different. So they may have fractions one 9 week, and the next 9 weeks it might be geometry. And so it just kind of depends on what the content is. So what we work with and what we do is we met with our executive principals yesterday and really dug into the test to say, okay, what do we need to go back and review with kids and make sure our teachers have the tools that they need to go back and review. So that is part of our focus for Content Co-op when we bring our teachers together, is we look at this by standard and we'll pull in those practice and resources for them around those standards that they need. We are still trending up from last year, though. In 4th grade math, we're up, so we're feeling good there. I keep going backwards. 5th grade reading. 5th grade reading stayed the same, but you can see we had a 12 percentage point increase in meets and a, is that 10? Yes, a 10 percentage point increase from last year in masters. So we're really pleased with 5th grade. Once again, they had a paired passage as well. So 5th graders are a little more accustomed to that. They've had those for a little bit longer, and they're a little bit more proficient at their reading. Takes a little bit less time for them to dig through the test. So pleased with that. And when you look at that same cohort of kids, you can see that we showed some growth in both meets and masters from the first 9 weeks to the second 9 weeks as well. 5th grade math stayed the same from last year. It was a little bit below in the approaches, but meets, we went up by 7 percentage points from where we were at last year. And in a little bit, we're going to look at growth of these particular kids from STAR to the second 9 weeks, and you'll see they experienced a lot of growth there too. So growth is looking pretty good with our 5th grade math. And looking at from the first 9 weeks to the second 9 weeks, you can see a little bit of growth as well, particularly with our master's kids there. So that double-digit increase there is good. Science is, once again, science is, I have to have the disclaimer again, we have all new, not all new, we have many new standards in science. So we're down in science, but right now we had the 2 lowest standards on this test are actually 8th grade standards that have been moved down into 5th grade. So our teachers are still learning how to teach those. And so we see a little bit of a decrease in approaches and meets. And so we're really looking at 5th grade. You're going to see 8th grade and biology look pretty good, but 5th grade science, the changes are pretty significant, so we're working with them.
So when you say 8th grade standards move down to 5th grade, are they teaching 5th graders what they used to be teaching 8th graders?
They're still, a lot of the content is still the same, but they've shifted some of the things around. And so some things that they taught in 5th grade have been moved to 4th and 3rd. And then some of the 7th and 8th grade standards have been shifted down to 5th grade. Mm-hmm. And so what we have found too, and I'll talk about it when we get to middle school, is we have middle school, and I can't remember what grade it is, either 6th, 7th, or 8th. One of those grade levels has almost 60% new content. So just helping the teachers grapple with what's new, and then trying to determine too, quite honestly, from the state of what's going to be on the assessment, because the new standards won't be on the STAR test, but the crossover will in the old for this year, and then next year all the new standards will be on there. We went ahead and put a couple of questions on with the new just to see how we're doing, and we know that obviously we're still learning, and just learning what materials we have around it as well.
And that was a question I was going to ask. Have the instructional materials shifted with these new standards? Okay.
I was going to ask the same question, John.
Yes, ma'am. We have all new science materials that you guys approved last spring, and so teachers are using those. Savvis is the materials that we use. It's an online platform, so they're still navigating that and working really closely. We have a wonderful instructional specialist in 5th grade in science at elementary. She's working closely with our 5th grade teachers and just making sure that if there's anything that maybe isn't in the new materials that we need to supplement, she's getting that feedback from our teachers so that we can, if we need to develop, we can do that to help them. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so is that also like what you talked about in fourth, that the content is more difficult? Or it's-
It changes each 9 weeks, and so
and so they may be doing,
so it may be that first 9 weeks they were doing multiplication, and second 9 weeks they're moving more into division, more complex word problems. And so we kind of, when we look at it with teachers and when teachers are looking at it on campus, they're digging into the actual standards and what is it that we need to work on in our intervention time. One of the resources that we have for that is IXL, and it's online, but teachers can either assign a particular standard. So if I'm struggling in division, I can be assigned division, and I can work through some practice on that. So that is one of our action steps, is we're really looking at how we're monitoring, are we using IXL? Are we using it in the classroom? Are our teachers, do they need any training on it, to make sure that we're providing anything to fill those
that
gaps?
support? Okay,
Mhm. Yes,
that was my
ma'am.
question.
Kim,
Thank
from
you
a,
so much.
from a parental standpoint here,
Yes,
it would be, I just learned that this is the case for my sixth grade daughter
Uh-huh.
as well. Maybe some communication to the parents that this is available.
Absolutely.
Would be beneficial in
Sure.
that now my daughter is spending 45 minutes a day on her Chromebook at home, working on those areas where she was deficient.
Absolutely, we can do that. Yeah, and some of our campus even have IXL. They use it for reading too. A couple of them have spent their funding on IXL reading, and so we can make sure that that communication gets sent out, because in particular that campus has it for reading too.
So it hasn't been put out there about the program?
Some of the campuses have sent it out. I don't know how comprehensive that communication has been, but we can definitely send a letter out. I can get that to principals to send out as well.
And so that, sorry, I didn't know that. But so that program and software is available at school or at home if the family has
Mhm.
access?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, absolutely. Good questions, thank you. I'm going to let Chris talk just a little bit about some elementary action steps, and then we'll talk about secondary.
Good morning, board.
Good morning.
I hope your travels were safe and slow, I'm sure, this morning with the weather outside. I'd like to go ahead and start with our elementary action steps and really start with talking about our instructional specialists and coaches and how hard they're working and an amazing job they're doing with communication with campuses and support to teachers and administrators every single day. Looking at math, the first piece to talk about is the continued working to develop familiarity with Eureka. As Eureka across the entire district, Tier 1, it's a first full year of implementation. We've had some campuses that are year 3, some campuses that are year 2, but across the board we're year 1 in Lubbock ISD. So one of the big pieces that our math team is focusing on is providing as much support as possible with internalization. So during PLCs, which are professional learning communities, teachers are internalizing lessons. And so what our instructional coaches and specialists are doing a phenomenal job doing, along with an adopted practice that we have across the district, is walking them through how to properly internalize a lesson and to be very reflective on how to be the expert in the classroom as they're delivering that lesson. As mentioned, we have internalization, but we are also moving into SWOP analysis within the PLCs. So SWOP is Student Work Analysis Protocol. So if we do have some teachers or campuses that are a little bit more graduated than others with internalization, we can start to move into teachers bringing work to actually analyze and start to create a plan of action in terms of what to do and how to provide intervention into Tier 1 and Tier 2 practices if we do see an area of focus that's needed for students in a particular class. And so we're continuing that work on the math side with, of course, the curriculum in Eureka. Coaches, again, are in PLCs constantly on campuses. We have an established process on how we're doing that, where they're going, and the frequency as well. We also have, as mentioned before, LISD's internalization practice. So what we're doing is making sure that all campuses are apprised of the internalization agenda and how to use that effectively. And also ground-based roots is supporting teachers. We're doing that each and every day. The next bullet is providing after-school sessions for teacher internalization. So we have something called Eureka Networking, where we provide additional internalization time with our district coaches and specialists. That's at Whiteside Elementary and also here at Central Office. That's something that's once a month after school, and it's a paid opportunity for our teachers to attend. We've been doing that since November. We are consistently communicating that out to teachers and principals about those opportunities, just to network and to get to collaborate with teachers, to get to collaborate with other teachers across the district, and to just really share their successes, maybe even share some frustration struggles to really help and support them in the classroom with lesson delivery. We also, at the district level, have a TIA retired teacher that taught 5th grade. Eureka is a champion of Eureka, and so what we've done is been able to dispatch her to different campuses to provide support to teachers that maybe need a little bit more time with planning for internalization. And it's been proven. She's been working with us since late November, and it's been proven she's done an amazing job. Principals are speaking highly about the work that she's doing, and teachers are excited that she's able to visit with them. Moving on to the third bullet, help teachers to develop STAR 2.0 questions. As Kim mentioned, we're moving into the third year of 2.0. And what we're trying to do is just to continue to develop capacity for our teachers in terms of how to develop those, how to utilize those questions, and how to implement those into the classrooms. Some of those 2.0 questions are drag and drops, the short constructed responses, and also one of the key features that we focus on is that text entry. Where what we're doing, and what's an amazing feature with Eduphoria, is we're able to look at individual test analysis and identify what teachers or what students are entering into their test through Eduphoria, just to really help with that Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention if we really need to hone in on that. Last bullet for math is providing targeted Rock and Review training at the next content co-op in February to prepare for STAR. As we're in the spring, or the second semester nearing spring, STAR is coming, and teachers, administrators, everyone alike are starting to gear in and focus in on STAR development. And what we're wanting to do as well is build capacity for teachers to feel comfortable, and also to have resources to implement in the classroom. This isn't a new thing. It's just something that we are consistent with every year, with making sure that we provide capacity to teachers. Moving into RLA, providing supplemental lessons to address needs identified on the assessments. As Kim mentioned, we've been able to sit down. It's been an amazing opportunity as a teaching and learning department. Instructional coaches, specialists, and executive principals all were in the room, and we were able to look at assessments and really talk through essentially the teaching and learning, and what are the support mechanisms, creating a strong pipeline of communication, and some of the things that we had talked about in that meeting, particularly for RLA, is building strong mini lessons. Like Kim had mentioned, taking the data through the second 9-week assessment and identifying what kind of supports can we provide for teachers. 2 mini lessons were provided to teachers at Content Co-op. Those mini lessons included answering the question through the ECR component, which is the extended constructed responses, a 2.0 piece as well, and also relevant text evidence. So those are 2 mini lessons that have been created by our RLA team and have been built capacity within Content Co-op for teachers. So now then they can deliver that in classroom instruction as we move into the second semester. Another focus that we discussed through our session was RTI, focusing on editing. And so really that's the big component that we talked through is within RTI time, response to intervention, looking at our Tier 2 and Tier 3 students and really focusing on the editing, revising and editing, but particularly with editing. And so those have been strong points that we've really focused on with whenever communicating with executive principals. Another thing, as mentioned, provide principals and executive principals with an overview of area of focus. What we determined through that session when we had executive coaches and all our team together is that we wanted to make sure that there was a good pipeline of communication. Pipeline of communication from the teaching and learning department to executive principals that could then be communicated over to principals and teachers alike. So everybody is on the same page in terms of what our focus is. That document was created. It's already, Abby and company, Dina and company have done an amazing job putting together the strengths that we observed, the areas of focus, what's our action plan. And so that's a one-pager that's going to be distributed to executive coaches and then to principals, so everyone's on the same page. Intensify support to high needs teachers. Again, sitting in session with executive principals, moving into data disaggregation, and really identifying and calibrating where can we provide additional support to teachers on particular campuses. It's been a blessing and it's been an amazing opportunity to sit down once a month with principals on their campuses and just really talking through where do they need support. Particularly to content, particular to teachers, and then really dispatching that support. So it's been an amazing opportunity to just build capacity, relationships with the principals, and then really start to see where are they seeing the need, where are we seeing the need based off of the data, and then really being responsive to that as well. Another additional piece to that is January content co-op collaboration. So those mini lessons were distributed to teachers, and then just really helping and supporting those mini lessons to be implemented into the classrooms itself. In science, as Kim mentioned, we're just continuing to train and coach teachers on new standards and materials. Yesterday, I was on a campus, and Karen, which is our science specialist, was on campus with me, and we were able to sit with the principal and really talk through the Savvis platform. As Kim mentioned, not only is it new standards, but it's a new curricula as well. And navigating that digital platform is something that we're continuing to build capacity, build professional development, and really not enlighten just teachers, but administrators alike, instructional coaches, on how to utilize the platform effectively and all the resources that Savvis is providing. One of the things that Karen has incorporated from Savvis and transitioned it over to Eduphoria are the topic wrap-up assessments. So administrators are able to essentially calibrate assessments and really identify where some of the needs based off of the grade level. Another piece is identify standards that will need to be reviewed next year. And again, this is just constant communication with teachers, where are the support mechanisms that they need, constant communication with Karen and Tabitha, and seeing what direction we need to go with identifying those gaps and what can we do to support teachers and admin alike. Generally speaking, some of the action steps that we have are coach individual campus principals along with executive principals on all of the curricular changes, all of the initiatives, things of that nature. And as I mentioned earlier, the pipeline of communication. I think that's been something that has been amazing for us to communicate with all the executive principals that then get passed down to principals, and also my opportunity to sit with principals once a month. Instructional walks with executive coaching team. That's another facet that we've collaboratively put together. So the entire team is walking through campuses to really observe the effectiveness of the HQIM, the high quality instructional materials, particularly like with Eureka on the math side or Amplify on the RLA side. And then we begin our HQIM ambassador program. And that's starting actually next week, where we're really wanting to just build champions of the HQIM on every campus. We believe in empowering our teacher leaders, and this program is going to be a wonderful opportunity where they're going to be immersed into the HQIM curriculum. How can we continue to be the champion on campus of the curricula through different campus initiatives? And lastly, continue our LASSO work with Region 17, the Educational Service Center. We're meeting with them 2 times a month, we're looking at action plans. We're identifying those action plans and looking at the steps on how we can effectively incorporate some of the components of LASSO, which is the Learning Acceleration Support Opportunity Grant that we have through Eureka. And so we're constantly meeting with the ESC to build great plans and implementing them effectively. One of those components I mentioned earlier was the SWOP analysis. That's what we're going to work into the second semester into PLCs on how we can help, again, build capacity for teachers that feel advanced with internalization and moving into SWOP analysis for PLCs. And that's all I have for our action steps with elementary.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Hey, HQIM, highly qualified.
High quality instructional materials. So
Okay.
that is like Eureka and Amplify. And then as we've discussed also the Bluebonnet Math, Bluebonnet RLA. And so those are all materials that have gone through the IMRA process and approved through the State Board of Education.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then one other question on, so who is on that executive coaching team? Sorry, this is a different, we're catching up and learning on this new model.
Yeah.
Who would be on an executive making a walk?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. It would be all of the executive principals that are over all the campuses, which would include Dr. McCall, Dr. Stevens, Beth Barrage, Ken Casares, Jocelyn Cotton. And so those executive principals, what we've done is we've created a schedule for visits onto campuses that are pretty specified in terms of like what particular opportunities on each campus that we could visit classrooms and observe the HQIM. So if it's a teacher that's a math teacher, we're able to walk into that class and actually observe the Eureka in progress. What we've also done through that program or that structure is also invited our instructional specialists and coaches to walk with us. And the why behind that is when we walk into a classroom, it's our coaches and specialists are the foremost experts on the material. So they're able to also communicate the pacing, the components of the lesson, where the teacher's at, can we provide additional support for that teacher, and then take that to the principal as well in terms of what can we do to support the teacher if there's areas of refinement. But if there's celebrations, of course, that's where we also want to celebrate as well, because I'll tell you, I get to visit campuses every day, and seeing some of the execution of the HQIM has been phenomenal on both sides, Eureka with Amplify and also Savvis.
Taking that approach helps us be consistent in how we're providing support and not sending mixed messages to teachers. So that's one reason why that calibration amongst those people on that executive coaching team is so important.
That's helpful, thank you.
All right, we're going to talk about secondary and my favorite group of kids, middle school kids, most of the time, right? So looking at our middle school data, and really we're going to look at secondary altogether, but middle school is, of course, an area that is probably our biggest concern. I think Robin would agree with that, where we're spending a lot of our time in teaching and learning is at the middle school level. And I think Kami would probably agree, as you're going to hear hers presentation as well. 7th and 8th grade is always an area of, is it behavior or is it academics, and kind of navigating that. So looking at 6th grade reading, you can see, looking from last year to this year, we are a little bit up in meets and masters, and that's great. What we want is, even if we're not up in approaches, that means those kids are shifting to that meets threshold, and so we want to see those numbers up in meets and masters so we can see a little bit of growth there. And then when you look at this same cohort of kids from the first 9 weeks to the second 9 weeks, we're significantly up in our meets area. And so that was really exciting to see that 12-point gain for those particular students in reading. And once again, second 9 weeks is more informational text, which is typically more difficult for our students. They tend to do a little bit better when they're reading fiction than they do nonfiction. In sixth grade math, when I came to you last 9 weeks, sixth grade math was where we were really on fire and we were focusing our attention on sixth grade math. You can see that we showed some gains in approaches, not so much in meets and masters, but what I do want to point out with sixth grade is there was a lot of new content this 9 weeks rather. They added in things that they have not been taught before and that weren't tested before. Ratios, percentages, and complex content that they haven't seen before. So if you look at these sixth graders as a cohort, you can see that moving from the first 9 weeks to the second 9 weeks, we had some celebration there as well, because we went up 12 points in meets, 4 points in approaches, and 12 points in masters. So even with some complex content, they really did a good job in, this is reading. Let me go back. Let me start back over again. So reading, we were about the same. Once again, we saw growth in reading, and that is 12 points in meets and 12 points in 8 points in masters. And so very pleased with sixth grade reading. Now let's talk about sixth grade math. Sixth grade math, we saw a little bit of growth in approaches. We were about the same in meets. Masters, we were down a little bit in. This is on level kids. This is not our advanced kids. So this is about 45 to 50% of our kids are in on level sixth grade. And you can see where we were last 9 weeks to compare to where we are this 9 weeks. We did see quite a bit of growth, almost 20% of growth in approaches, even with that complex content. So sixth grade, we were pleased with. Sixth grade advanced also showed improvement, and this is a large group of kids. We were very excited about our meets and masters. Their content between on-level and advanced math is a little bit different because our advanced kids are getting 6th and part of 7th grade in 6th grade, and then they get 7th and part of 8th grade in 7th grade so that they're prepared for Algebra 1 when they get to 8th grade. So the content looks a little bit different, but they still showed progress from last year, and they showed progress from the first 9 weeks to the second 9 weeks. So we were, 6th grade was a little bit of a celebration for us this 9 weeks. In 7th grade reading, you can see we had some pretty significant growth from where we were at last year to this year, particularly in meets where we were up 30%. 7th grade has been an area of focus really for us in reading because that is the area on STAR. Our 6th graders last year struggled the most in reading and math, and so we really have focused in on 7th grade, in particular in reading. And if you look at those same cohort of kiddos, they showed growth from the first 9 weeks to the second. Some pretty great growth there too. So very pleased with that. We were so focused on reading and so focused on 6th grade math that 7th grade math fell by the wayside. And you can see there were minimal changes to this test. So this is not new material. It's not a new test. We didn't make, I think there were 3 questions that were new from last year, but we saw quite a drop. It's proportionality is what they're working on and solving equations multi-step, and they struggled with it. And as we are reaching out to teachers to get a little bit more input because we're not really sure what happened. Our advanced kids that you're going to see in just a second, they moved up, but our on-level fell backwards. So we've identified 2 standards in particular that after looking at the data that we really saw a drop from last year. I don't know if there was a gap from previous years, and what our team is doing is developing some resources that we can give to teachers to go back in and make sure that we fill in that gap. We'll also be monitoring IXL at the middle school level, as I said earlier, because we can target those particular standards to make sure that whatever they missed, we're able to go back in and give them that support, both teachers and students. When you look at that same cohort of kids, they dropped a little bit, but as I said earlier, this 6th grade group was our low, or 7th grade group last year as 6th graders on STAR were our lowest group for math. And so we know that they have some gaps that we've got to really work on filling. So as we move into our next content co-op, we're prioritizing 6th and 7th grade math and going to provide resources before February with them, but then also really provide some targeted PD with them at our next co-op session. Advanced math, as I said before, they did show increase from last year. Once again, the test didn't change very much, so this is closer to apples. And when you look at those particular students from first 9 weeks to second 9 weeks, we saw some gains there. So, and a lot of our math teachers teach on level and advanced, so we definitely need to differentiate, change our instruction for our on level kids, because whatever standards they miss, they obviously have those gaps that we've got to fill in. 8th grade reading, we do have a board goal, and that is by June that 55% of our students will be at meets level. And you can see that we are at 59% right now. So we are very pleased with that. We're about where we were last year, but that was good because that was where our goal was at. So we definitely want to continue that. And you can see our same cohort of kids showed some growth from the first 9 weeks to the second 9 weeks. 8th grade math. Once again, this is just our on-level kids because our advanced kids are going to be in Algebra 1. They maintained, dropped a little bit from last year, but you can see our goal for our board goal is that 44% of our kids are at meeting expectations on this test, and we're at 40. So we've got a little bit of time to get there, but we're definitely trending in the right direction to get there. And when you look at how those kids did first 9 weeks to second 9 weeks, we went up almost 25 points in approaches, which was great, and right at 10 points, 9 points at meet. So we're moving in the right direction with this cohort of kids. Algebra 1 at middle school was down a little bit, but we're still at 94% and 71% meet, so we're pleased with that. That's looking good. And when you look at those kids from first 9 weeks to second 9 weeks, they're moving in the right direction. So pleased with our advanced kiddos. And that's about 36% of our kids are in algebra. About 33% are in Algebra 1 in 8th grade. 8th grade science. While 5th grade, we saw lots of drops in approaches, meets, and masters. Meets and masters, we saw a little bit of a drop here, or not a little bit, more than I would like to see. Once again, we're navigating through some changes in our curriculum and changes in materials for science. And then social studies looked good compared to last year. We were up in all 3 categories. Shifting over to high school, our high school principals and teachers have really been focused on English 1. Our freshmen, and you can see compared to last year, we are up 11 points at the meets level, which is great. And even at our master's level, we've showed increase from last year, which is wonderful. When you look at this group, this cohort of students, we're moving in the right direction with them. We have really focused on English 1. That is the conversation that we have pretty much in any time we're in any of our high schools. English 2 experienced a drop, but historically on STAR, we don't see them being lower than English 1. So we'll monitor this and really look at it at benchmark time. It was a little surprising. We do have quite a few new teachers in English 2, so just making sure we're supporting them is important moving forward, because even with this particular cohort of kid, we saw some drops. So we're going to really target that a little bit more. It's kind of like whack-a-mole. We're working on English 1 so hard, and now we got to shift over to English 2. So Algebra 1 at the high school was down, was up from last year. You can see at all 3 levels, which is great, because these are our on-level kids. They were up in approaches from the first 9 weeks. Meets was down, which is interesting because master's was up. So I need to dig into that a little bit more with our campuses to find out if it was a content piece, what standard it was, and do we need to provide some resources? What does that need to look like for between now and benchmark? What were those gaps? Biology looks good. We were down a little bit, but we're still at 93% approaches and 70% meets in biology, so we're very excited with that. And then U.S. history, of course, looks pretty good too, with 70% of our kids being at meets. This was difficult. This is Constitution, and that's a difficult 9 weeks for our kiddos. So, looking at growth from STAR, we've been talking about achievement. I want to talk about growth. So one of the things that we look at, and y'all have seen this before, our campuses look at how did we do on STAR compared to how we do each 9 weeks, and we're able to pull it by student. And so this graph, the blue is still this second 9 weeks. How many growth points did we get from STAR to the second 9 weeks assessment? The orange is what our growth was on the first 9 weeks, from STAR to the first 9 weeks. Our goal and what we like to see, we love to see 70 and 80% or points. Anything above 60 we're pleased with. So if you look at that, you can see 4th grade and English 2 were our areas of RLA that we really need to look at particular kids and why they're falling backwards. Everybody else was above that 60 point threshold. And then of math, honestly, your eye immediately goes to 7th grade math, as it does mine, and we've got some action steps in place to work on that, both short-term action steps and some long-term action steps, because we know, just like our counterparts around the state and really around the nation, we have a middle school math problem. And so I'm going to let Robin talk a little bit about both our short-term action steps and our long-term action steps around secondary.
Morning. I want to tell you thank you for the extra time this morning. I needed it personally to get here safely, so thank you for that. Thank you. Last time I was with you, I remember that 6th grade math was our highest priority. And so we ran to the fire of 6th grade math, and we saw gains. We're celebrating those gains. But while we were working so hard and diligently in 6th grade math, our 7th grade math suffered. And so we definitely have a middle school math priority. We're not alone in that. The entire state has a middle school math priority, as does the nation, to be really honest with you. But as I'm sitting here listening to Kim share the data with you, my brain just keeps going to, so what are we doing about it? If I'm sitting in your shoes, you're seeing the data, and you're wanting to know, okay, great, what are we doing about it? And we are doing many, many things. Some things we are proud that we are starting to see those small results, and other things we've got to dream a little bit. So it is a complex problem. And that's why we've divided for secondary some short-term action steps, like what are we going to do in the next month, and then also some long-term action steps, because we know we need to dream a little, and what are we going to do as we move into the summer. So let's dive right into math. Several of these bullets Chris has already shared with you, and I don't want to be redundant. I'm not skipping any bullets on purpose, but a great action step sometimes for improving teaching and learning is the same, regardless of if you're working with a 3rd grade teacher or an 8th grade teacher. So I'm just going to hit the highlights on this screen to save redundancy, but I am happy to answer any questions if you see anything and you go, hold the phone, let's go back and look at that. Some specifics on bullet point number 1. When we dug into the 7th grade test in particular, we noticed that there were some very important standards where our students struggled. We noticed that they were highly tested, and almost more importantly for me, these are standards that they desperately need in 7th grade to continue their story of mathematics and be ready for that SAT and be ready for college or career. And so we are working right now. We started the work this week when we came back from Christmas break We don't want to just walk into 7th grade and go, hey, we noticed that you've got, that we've got this issue with 7.4D. That is a proportionality problem standard that is critical. We don't want to just hand them resources and go, here's some more stuff. Good luck. Let's see if we can't fix it this month. We realize we've got new teachers in many places across our district in 7th grade, and so we are developing a PLC turnaround where we're going to go and do some lesson rehearsal. It's called micro-teaching, where we are going to model some best practice around just some of those highly tested important standards. We are going to do that before the next content co-op in February. So the month of January, we're developing it now, and then we are going to go to every single middle school, and we're going to enjoy some time with some 7th grade on-level teachers. We have great trust and rapport with those teachers, and we are going to try to prioritize our impact where it matters most. So that's a short term, what's happening in the month. Of course, we're planning Rocking Review. Of course, we have looked at our calendars of where we're sending our specialists and coaches, and we are changing our weekly schedule to go where we are most needed. But the last bullet under math, I want to mention to you IXL. Kim said that at the beginning of our time with you this morning. IXL is a software program. It's a computer program that you approved for us in the spring. Thank you for that. It is specifically at middle school used for Tier 2, so our kids that have gaps, and we're trying to close those gaps. That's what that program is used for. And we noticed a correlation when I looked by campus to see, okay, where are our campuses where 7th grade scores are looking pretty good? Where are those places? And then I looked at IXL usage. I saw a correlation. And so we are really being intentional about encouraging IXL usage on our middle school campuses. We're going to do a fun little incentive program during the month of January and February, see if we can't get some competitive, friendly competition going to encourage that IXL usage to close some of those gaps. In RLA, the message I want you to hear is that we are staying the course. We have some great things happening, and our task is to be consistent during the months of January and February leading up to STAR. I would point out on bullet 2, editing and revising. That's a place where we are leaving points on the table. And we have a grassroots initiative from one of our high schools. They recognized that was something, an area of concern for their students, and so they developed a plan, and they shared that plan at Content Co-op with the other high schools in just this past Monday. It was standing room only. The room was entirely full, multiple sessions repeating, and then I had the privilege of being at one of our high schools on Tuesday, sat in the PLC, and I listened to teachers say, we're leaving points on the table here. This is a spelling editing and revising question. This was a spelling question, and we have an online dictionary embedded in. And so they had already listed the kids that had missed that question. They are, as we speak, these 3 days, having quick little one-on-one conversations with every single kid that missed that particular question. And so we're not gonna leave any points on the table with editing, and we're gonna stay the course on those big things like the essays, the ECRs, the calibration. Science, the word I want you to leave with you is gratitude. Our middle school especially, but also our high school science teachers. Kim mentioned earlier in some grade levels, they have 60, almost 70% new standards. So is the word fruit basket turnover, is that the word I'm looking for? Fruit roll up? Where it used to be in 8th, now it's in 6th. It used to be in 7th, and now it's in biology. And so not only are they navigating new curriculum materials, but they're navigating entirely new standards that they haven't taught before, and they are doing a wonderful job. So gratitude, stay the course in science. The one thing I do want to point out to you about science, bullet number 2, last spring, in the midst of all this transition with science, last spring we pulled the middle school principals together, and they agreed that this would be the year, since we were in a transition year anyway, that this would be the year that we would pivot our STAR test to 8th grade only. So what I mean by that is every other year, our 7th advanced, they may have been called honors, don't let me misspeak, advanced, Our 7th advanced students took the 8th grade Science Star, as well as our on-level 8th graders. And this is our transition year. We're only testing 8th grade, which means some of those 7th advanced students already took it. They took it last year. So our 8th grade on-level will stand alone. And because of that, and how that's going to impact our scores just in this one transition year, we know that those 8th grade on-level teachers really need our support. They've been receiving it all year long, but we are going to pull them. We try our best not to do that because we know how important it is that teachers are in the classroom, and we also understand our substitute concerns. But we are going to pull those teachers for a half day to give them some really targeted help preparing for STAR, because we know that this year, in this bridge year, it's going to be important. Okay, I think I have, and then some of the same things, the executive coaching team like you talked about, we're also visiting secondary schools. We're also having the ambassador program for high quality instructional materials. Let me go to long term because I love to dream. And so some of these problems for us to fix, the short term is more like a Band-Aid on a big wound. And so what are we going to do long term? And as I look, again, if we point out just a few things, if I could skip down to RLA Bullet 2, Content Co-op, we appreciate so much the opportunity to meet with our teachers to provide professional development. But we are right now dreaming about what that can look like for next year and how we can reimagine that. We want to, of course, balance teacher autonomy. I love giving teachers choices of where they feel that they need to learn. And so we definitely want to keep teacher autonomy, but we also need to balance that with our student needs. And so we have begun that work already a little bit. I mentioned the one high school that had a grassroots plan for editing and revising, much bigger than having one-on-one conversations. That's just one small part. But we also had a different high school that just shared, again, standing room only, writing and meets to masters. They did an entire breakout session, repeated it 3 times, standing room only, on argumentative essays. I love teachers teaching other teachers. I think that when folks are in the trenches, so to speak, their credibility just rises. It's not the same as somebody that's been out of the classroom for a while telling you what to do. I just think credibility is very important. We also have partnered with external guests. I've reached out to Region 17. We had a science presentation on had a wicked theme, ways to improve Science Star scores. We brought in some people from Carnegie Learning just this Monday to help with some exemplar lessons in 6th and 7th grade. But I am really excited to reimagine it on a grand scale. So I'm already dreaming. I've already got a couple of proposals that we're taking, and I'm excited to share those with you at a later date. As we move on, let's jump down to the very last one. Math. We're taking a very hard look at our middle school math curriculum right now. We have been using Carnegie Learning materials, and that's a high quality instructional material provided by the state. In November, the SBOE commissioner released 5 recommendations of 5 curricula that have been through what they call the IMRA process, IMRA, Instructional Materials Review and Approval Process. And there are actually 5 curricula that are on that approved list. And so right now, I'm in the fact finding. I'm calling those vendors. I'm just cold calling them. I'm setting up meetings. I'm trying to learn about the curricula and just decide. I know that it's a complex problem, but we're trying to listen to our teachers. We're trying to interpret what our data says, and if we need to perhaps look at what we're providing for our teachers, I want to be able to bring that to you at a later date and let you know what I find out.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
The Region 17, is that being used in the summer?
Yes, ma'am. So we have a very healthy relationship with Region 17, and so they have helped us before this year in Content Co-op. They let me know. We talk to each other on the phone almost weekly in some instances, where they tell me what conferences or workshops they have, and then I share that with their teachers so they can go. But they also partner with us. They've been very helpful to me personally to say, hey, can we schedule a Zoom meeting? Here's what I'm thinking about. Give me the pros and cons. So the answer is yes to all. Thank you. For that. Anything else?
And this may be, maybe I just didn't know this, but have we always had on-level teachers also teaching advanced and vice versa? Is that a practice for math?
It depends on the number of teachers that we have in staffing and the size of the middle school.
Yeah.
If you're a smaller middle school, yes, we have always done that. If you're a larger middle school, so you have large numbers of students in both, then we can separate it and you can teach one or the other.
Is that a best practice with respect to state? I mean, it seems like if I'm a teacher, and I understand numbers, but if I'm a teacher and I'm preparing to, educate kids that are on X level, and then the very next class I'm dealing with a different level. And I know that happens throughout everything, but specifically with math, given the struggles, I just wonder if we're utilizing a best practice there, and that
it
may
really
tie
is.
into some of the issues.
Yeah, it really is. Actually goes back to about numbers. When we have larger middle schools and we have the opportunity that you have 150 students, for example, if I have 300 students in a grade level, let's pretend half of them are in advanced and half of them are in regular, then I can have 2 different teachers do that. When I have middle schools that have 100 total students in a grade level, or even 200 students in a grade level, it's very difficult to have a teacher. They are underutilized then as a teacher, and they don't have full classes. So yes, it is ideal when we can have them just teach one and just do advanced or on level, but it really does come to numbers and the size of those schools. And so those 2 things play a really important role with one another.
I wonder if down the road that's an area where we could look at, like with our dyslexia coaches, where they're on different campuses.
So where they would rotate by.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
If you're specializing, because this is year 7 that we continue to struggle in middle school,
Yes.
specifically math.
Yes, yes. And we're doing some deep dives, and we have a committee meeting tomorrow that we're going to give you some more information about some deep dives that we're doing as well, because one of the things to consider when you think about middle school math problems is students didn't just wake up in 7th grade and have a problem in math. So what are the precursors that are taking place before that, even all the way down into elementary school, whether that is in curriculum, assessment, or instruction, that are setting that foundation up, that then we're hitting the problem here. So the problem is happening here, but it somewhere down the road previously, some things have taken place that are setting us up to get there. So we're trying to make sure that we're setting our kids up to be successful along the way. But that's a great consideration too.
And then the only other thing, and I've said this about some other things, and I get the autonomy. I've never been a teacher. I've never been a principal. I would be horrible at both of those things. But if the data states that IXL is as functional as it is in adding, I don't think that should be an option. I mean, if we're paying for the software and we have data that says it's working, that to me, that should be something that's mandated. If what y'all are saying is accurate, I mean, to me, and it's a tool where the teacher, unless I'm misunderstanding, they're not having to do additional work to provide that resource. It's already provided, and it's helping the kids. So if I'm a teacher, I can't understand why I would be against that.
It's a wonderful tool, yes. And so every middle school's used it. There is a goal built into the program that to see gains, students need to do at least a minimum of 15 questions a week. And so when I pulled the data, some of our campuses, kiddos are doing 30 questions, 40 questions a week. And that there's a correlation there, but every campus was using it. It's a matter of finding those magical minutes of being hungry for, okay, this lesson, there are 3 minutes here, there's 5 minutes here, maybe we could use it during, homeroom time, trying to find those magical minutes to or being very intentional and saying, we've got some students that we know are struggling, how can we adapt their schedule to find some sacred time for them. All of our middle school campuses are doing it. Some are just having a little more success with that than others, and that's what we're trying to encourage. But we agree with you 100%. It is an expectation for all of our middle schools.
I have a couple thoughts, and actually stole my thunder on that, encouraging versus autonomy. But do we have a district-wide homework policy, or what is the? Haven't heard much about.
We don't. Yeah, we don't have a district-wide. We have district-wide grading policy, and that influences homework. But we do not have a district-wide grading. Each campus adds that into their grading policy about what they're doing. What we have discovered, and many of our middle schools have discovered, is that if you do homework practice at home and you do it incorrectly on your own, then it seals the learning incorrectly. So if you do homework practice at home and someone else does it for you, it doesn't impact what you do. And so homework is designed, if you're using it, is designed to just be practice, not necessarily for grade. And so we have to be really careful when we think about students in a district that is predominantly, our students live in poverty, that makes a difference in their homework practice at home. So that's why you don't see as much homework as maybe in past generations of what you have seen.
Seems like for practice would be the goal, right? Not learning new things.
Right. But for practice,
redundancy.
if it's sealed and you know how to do it correctly, and we can guarantee that, then for practice is beneficial. So that's just why we have to be really careful about those things. But y'all brought up a point earlier too, that things like iExcel can be done at home, which then does automatic corrections and automatic feedback in real time if you have internet access at home.
Sure.
In order to do that. So we just have some barriers that we have to keep working through.
The other question I would ask is, how long have we been using the Carnegie?
This is our third year.
Okay,
Our third
because we hear a lot of challenges that are brought to our attention when we see falling numbers that we are changing curriculum.
Absolutely.
And it's because of, we're going through this change and doing that. So I'm not saying that Carnegie's a great option, that it's not, but the more we change curriculum, the more we keep getting this answer that, well, this is the reason these numbers are falling.
Absolutely.
And we'd love to, and tomorrow, one of the things on our agenda in student achievement is to do a deep dive into what is called Bluebonnet, which is the new curriculum adoptions from the state. And that is part of that conversation, to do a deep dive of where we've been, what we've looked at, what that looks like and sounds like, and what are some potential discussions for the future.
And we want our high-flying teachers to be on board, and so that's why we want to get their input as well before we make any decisions.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Do we have any idea of what percentage of our families have internet as opposed to don't have internet access at home?
I don't know that.
I know during
COVID,
we did pass out
hotspots.
I think we had 1,000 hotspots that we distributed.
We were able to, one of the, I can't remember which cell phone company offered it to us. There was a lot of companies offering everything during that time, as y'all are aware. So, and we passed them out. And honestly, I don't know, I think our parking lot, what do we call them?
The Park and Learns.
Oh, yeah.
Our Park and Learns had a larger impact. I remember seeing pictures of kids sitting on the benches and under trees outside doing work, more so than those hotspots. But I'll reach out to Damon Jackson and see if we got some data behind that.
And an alternative to that too, when we talk about after or out of school work, that also includes all of our campuses that offer ACE after school programming. Our kids stay and we use resources like that inside that after school programming. So even though we use the words out of school may be after school tutorial time or ACE time that is on campus. So they're still using devices and internet in the building, but it is not happening inside the traditional school hours.
Okay, that's a helpful clarification. Good.
Questions? All right. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
We're going to call up Kami Finger. She's going to do the other half of our progress measures to look at school support.
We made some adjustments based on your feedback.
Yes,
so
we did.
Kim's portion was longer than it was last time, and Kami's will be a little shorter. Not because Kami is
too long. Kami does a beautiful job.
Good morning.
I'll start the timer.
How
Go
are
ahead.
y'all? That's okay, because I have a 16-year-old on the road for the first time in snow, going to feed and get to school, so I can check on him more quickly. He'll be fine. All right, so this is your school support and special services update, specifically addressing behavior and then some discipline, but not as much as you're used to. And so these are our goals that we are focusing on. There are a lot of performance objectives that are not listed here that I'll talk about a little bit more within the presentation, but these are our areas of focus. You can see our incidents by week all the way up until current, and so you'll see that we are starting to trend very much to last year. We had a couple of spikes on week 8 and week 13. Week 8 really did not have a whole lot going on, except it fell right before student holiday. No, it didn't. I was hoping it jived
thought it
with
was
the
the
fair,
fair.
but it didn't jive with the fair. It's exactly what I thought too. It was right before a student holiday, and it's the week before the last 9 weeks of school, so there's a lot of pressure there too. Those are my assumptions. And then week 13 fell right after the election and our fall break, and so I assume kids came back in that week, and we're just testing the waters, but those are my
So just do away with the fall break then?
No.
Or the election, which one?
We'll help them make their adjustments. It'll be fine. Your major dips are Thanksgiving week. And so this is just a different view of that. So you can see our goal is to make sure our discipline incidences are going down. We have a slight decrease from last year. And so there are some areas that we need to continue to work on. Our expulsions are down. Our placements in our AEP or PIA are down. Our out-of-school suspensions are down. This is an area that we have focused on since last year, especially with our students who are experiencing homelessness or those who we know they're better served if they're staying at school. And so we have been working on out-of-school suspension. In-school suspension is also showing down from this time last year. You can see 7th and 8th and 9th grade are our winners for the most incidences as far as school goes. And so with 7th grade, I do want you to know that 106 of our 7th graders out of 233 have been placed at PIA this year. So when it comes to middle school, they make up for almost half the placements at priority intervention. So if I'm going to look at campus data and I'm going to look at 7th grade, I'm going to go to their students and I'm going to see how many times they're in the calculation for the total number of incidences, right? So if I have a student who's struggling with classroom disruption or hallway behavior or repeated ISS, we're looking at those students more intensely. And what we see is in middle school, we have students whose impulse control, whose ability to regulate, whose ability to make good choices, especially when it comes to classroom disruption, are making poor choices. And those students should be being targeted by the campus through Tier 2 or Tier 3 interventions. When we pull up their campus behavior support documentation and their handbook, that is a spreadsheet, I should be able to see Tier 2 kids and Tier 3 kids on their spreadsheet, and then I should be able to see what is the campus doing to intervene on their behalf, whether that's working with outside community agencies, whether that's practicing behavior in the hallway, whether that's having a behavior intervention plan that identifies research-based strategies that are addressing the skill deficit that we see. So what's the function of behavior? Is it to escape? Is it to attention seek? Is it because I am academically frustrated and I can't tune into instruction? Is it because I have attention issues or impulsivity? And so those are the things that our campuses should be digging into, as well as classroom management. We do see a shift from elementary, I'm an elementary school teacher, to middle school teachers, where elementary school teachers are very structured and they have routines and systems in place. When you get to middle school, we should be walking into classrooms and we should be seeing them using our CHAMPS model. And so what does the conversation look like in the classroom for this particular time of instruction? What does it look like to get help? What should the activity look like? What's the movement look like in class? How do I participate? And overall, the teacher should be defining how the students show success in their class. And so those are the things that we're monitoring through our Student Behavior Support Division. Very similar to everything that you heard on the instructional side of the house, by walking into the classroom, by coaching the teacher, by making sure she has a classroom-wide system, individual systems in place, positive reinforcement, all of those things.
Amy, are those mostly male students?
I'm going to say yes, absolutely, yeah. And if we needed to pull female versus female
I'm just curious.
off this data, we can do that, but in large part. Now, I will say, unfortunately, we do see a little bit of growth with our female data when it comes to more engagement in physical altercations, and that's an area that we're looking at also. So this is just your organizational breakdown. We do have an increase of 7% in elementary school, and then a decrease in our high schools and middle schools overall. We like to check our percentage. Are we decreasing because of our enrollment? Are we decreasing because we're actually seeing a decrease? And right now we're at a 27% overall decrease. The last time we checked this number, it was 26%. So we have grown 1% in increasing our overall disciplinary incidence as far as a percentage goes. This is your behavior trend. This is a 3-year comparison, so that 3-year change is just overall. We like to see, especially post-COVID, now that we're beginning to stabilize, our data's more reliable, but our 2 areas of concern are classroom disruption and student assaults. And so when we talk about student assaults, that can vary. That can be anything from a slap to a pinch to a spit to if a student says that I've experienced pain or that the other person has hurt me and the principal and police officer define that as assault, then it could be coded as assault. That can be handled on the campus, or that can be handled by referring the student to priority intervention. And every single one of those decisions are made by your campus behavior coordinator, which is your principal, utilizing discipline decision-making processes and all the things that we give them to be able to do that, including Chapter 37, particularly in the area of assault. And so just want to mention that. This is incident by behavior for elementary school. So you have your top 3 behaviors at elementary being insubordination, inappropriate physical contact, and violation of student code of contact. Last year at this time, it was inappropriate physical contact. So we were working a whole lot on hallway behaviors, classroom behaviors, cafeteria behaviors, keeping our hands to self. And so those numbers have adjusted. Elementary aggressive behavior, these are the students that are actually, because I want to put perspective around this, what we can handle out on campuses when it comes to the behavior that I'm reporting are handled and handled well. Those that they feel like need to go to DAP are more aggressive in nature. And so this is what your data really looks like when it comes to aggressive behavior reported and that deemed necessary for a DAP placement. So for elementary, we've had 3 aggressive student assaults, 1 felony offense. A felony offense can be, usually it's not occurring on our campuses, it's outside of campus that then we have to take action on based on the knowledge that we have. Most of the time that's assault off campus, unless you're in middle school or high school, and then those offenses kind of elevate. So our elementary placement comparison data is this time, since last year, in comparison to last year, we're down 87 placements at PIA for elementary, 2 placements this time last year at 6, and then 3, we're down 2. And then we don't have 4. Middle school, it's classroom disruption, insubordination, and violation of student code of conduct. So those are your top 3 behaviors in middle school that we're looking at and addressing. I'm going to go back to this slide because it was misplaced. I apologize. So middle school aggressive behaviors, we have 2 mutual fights, total student assaults at 51, total staff assaults at 3, And I'll show you the breakdown of have we improved in that area since last year, and then first to second 9 weeks in just a second. And then total number of terroristic threats, 1, and then 3 felony offenses. But again, our numbers are down when it comes to our overall placements, and they're also down for all drugs, assaults, staff assaults, and threat assessments. So we are seeing improvement in all of those areas. For high school, your top behavior is truancy, and I just want you to know that we are looking at each of those breakdowns to see if we're making gains. When it comes to truancy, the district has made a sweeping effort across the district to improve attendance. In middle school and high school, students are counted by the periods in which they show up. And so if we have classroom avoidance, if we have that we're skipping class on a regular basis, if a student's having attendance issues, then there are a lot of efforts being made around, number 1, looking at the data, number 2, identifying the students, addressing it through attendance behavior intervention plans, or what we call ABIPs, through either our student support teams, or if the student's receiving services through 504 or special education, then we would be addressing it more formally in those meetings, involving the attendance officer, CIS, social workers are involved, and making every attempt to get the parent guardian in the midst of it to see that they're showing up. So we have seen a decrease from last year to this year. From last year, 1,404 total incidents, to this year, we're at 996.
And Kami mentioned CIS. Communities in Schools is a tremendous partner in this work.
And then high school, again, when we're talking about assault or more aggressive behaviors, those students are going to Priority Intervention Academy. We've had 8 total mutual fights, 48 assaults, 1 staff assault, 3 terroristic threats, and 8 felonies. And again, the felonies are usually off campus. Sometimes they involve assault. In large part, they involve assault. Sometimes they involve a weapon. And then you see our numbers again are still trending down from last year. And then first 9-week data and second 9-week data, just looking at our second 9-week data, our overall placements, 171, which is less 36 this time last year. And then you can see across what our placements look like from there. And then our drug offenses are down by 41. Our assaults are up by 9. So that is an area that we are looking at. Our staff assaults, though, are down by 5, and our terroristic threats are down by 7. So what are we doing overall? You've heard this before. Talked a lot about the PBIS handbooks, ongoing coaching and support. Tier 3 campuses are being supported directly by our Director of Student Behavior Support, Martha Dodge. We are doing systems walk and in conjunction with the instructional walks occurring with teaching and learning. Campus Student Behavior Support Specialist in supporting that effort. We did meet with Covenant and hope to be able to present our outcomes to them in hopes to obtain a grant. And then just our systemic ongoing referral process from Tier 1 to all the way, if needed, 504 special education. We are still evaluating the need for a kinder transition program, but we have got to find the right person to run this program. And so putting anyone in a kinder transition program is not going to be sustainable. So we're looking for the right individual. Continued focus on early identification and intervention, working with pre-K and K a lot. Increased training opportunities, and we're checking in with PI on a weekly basis. And then our drug intervention program is still going strong. Our participation rate for those students that are entering the program are anywhere from about 75 to about 85% completion. And then we have a lot of partnerships with community agencies ongoing that help with all aspects of student behavior and mental health. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you.
Thank you, Kami.
All right. Does that conclude our progress measures? portion? Okay. Let's take about a 5-minute break while we transition to the next item, and we will come back at 9:30. That's okay.
I did get some information from Damon Jackson. So in 2020, 15%, we did it through a survey when we were going through the COVID transition. 15% of our students responded that they did not have internet or reliable internet at home. So roughly at 24,000, about 3,600 kids.
15%.
15%, yes, ma'am. 1
Okay,
5.
and that was when again?
2020.
2020.
Right, March. Summer 2020, we were trying to assess how do we make sure our kids can do at-home learning. So just for y'all.
Do they still have access to any of that?
Yeah, he sent me the document that was done back then, but not the survey. It was just the things that we were doing to try to get ready. So.
But I believe our Park and Learns still
Yeah,
actually.
that's what that was my question.
Those are still available.
Yes.
I think the Park and Learns are still going. We
Okay,
might
I
have
thought they
moved-
were, but I wanted to
We might have
confirm.
moved the Monterey, Monterey, where we did the pre-K registration. We moved it from the big parking lot over closer to the cafeteria because we needed the internet access. But it's still
Because
in
the
the parking lot.
Patterson Library has one. One over there.
Okay. So
I don't know if they put it,
just-
the city put it, or we put it. I don't know.
We didn't do
Then it
anything.
was the
No, we
city.
did it at our
Only
high
in our
schools and middle schools.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it was them. So that was beneficial to the kids there.
Oh, Damon just corrected me. We added the extra coverage for the cafeteria at Monterey, not moved it.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Are you ready for, I'm sorry, we're going to go ahead and probably get started. Well, I'm sure Marianne and Lala are on their way back. All right, it's 9:33. We will reconvene and start the last portion of our workshop, public information request process. Erin, please deliver us.
Alrighty, well, Dr. Roller, President Bridges, trustees, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you this morning about the public information request process that we handle in the Communications and Community Relations Office. So I will go ahead and get started. So, as you probably already know, the goal of the public information request process is really promoting transparency with governmental agencies, the stakeholders, whether they are parents, community members, other interested parties, media outlets, to district records. And it is an absolute honor and privilege to serve as a public information officer for Lubbock ISD, because as a public relations professional, transparency is key to how we build relationships with people and build trust with our stakeholders. The legal framework is governed by not only the Texas Public Information Act, but also the Federal Freedom of Information Act, most specifically the federal laws around FERPA, or what really impact our public information requests in Lubbock ISD. So just a quick overview of how it happens. There's a couple of different ways that people can submit a request. So you can do it in person, you can do it snail mail, we have an email address, or we have an online form. So any of those ways work to submit a public information request. They're reviewed for clarity and legal compliance, and then records are gathered, reviewed, and provided within 10 business days or with explanation for any delays. So generally speaking, there's a 10-day deadline with the Texas Attorney General's office to either provide the records to the requester, to provide a date when you will provide the records if it's past the 10-day deadline, or if you have content that needs to be sent to the Attorney General for review, that needs to be done within that 10-day deadline. So for 2024, we had a total of 99 requests, which averages about 8 a month. And what you might find interesting about this is in 2021, when I first started doing public information requests, we had 67. So this is about a 48% increase over the last few years. It's increased every year. It was 67 in 2021, 74 in 2022. We had 87 the previous year in 2023, and then 99 in 2024. And I ran some data on the spreadsheet that almost 95% of our requests are fulfilled within 10 business days, with an average fulfillment time of almost 15 days if we go past the 10-day deadline. I have 2 slides to show you just generally what is requested. And so it kind of falls into these 4 categories, and then there's some miscellaneous. But you can see the largest amount in the red is financial records. And that's not only, it's really mostly procurement requests. And so a lot of times vendors who are looking for, they've maybe gone through the RFP process and they want a bid tabulation or things like that. Those are frequently what people are asking for in that category. Personnel records could be sometimes employment files, or are requested. A lot of what's in an employee file is disclosable through the Public Information Act. But also we have a lot of people that want employee information, whether it's email addresses, et cetera. We get a lot of requests for that. And if employees have not elected to keep that information private, then we release it to requesters. Policies and procedures, sometimes we get requests for contractual information. Anytime we're entering into agreements with other entities, there's a lot of different ones in there. And then other could be all kinds of different things that come in through the public information request process. That's sort of like the general category. And then this one you can see like what types of organizations or people are asking. I know that's kind of small because it really broke into more categories than I thought it would. Some people are individuals, and also education vendors take up the largest amount of people that are making requests to us on an annual basis. This was really just for 2024. We don't get too many requests from media outlets, and more of the requests we get from media outlets are from media entities that are outside of Lubbock. We have several statewide newsletters, news agencies that contact us around a variety of things, but we really don't do too many with media. We have some advocacy groups, and that could be like the Texas Retired Teachers Association or things like that, that are looking for information. Sometimes it's government entities. We've gotten several from the city of Lubbock for information. To help with studies they're doing or other things that they're taking care of. Some from legal and consulting firms. That has to do with sometimes the procurement requests, educational institutions. You may remember earlier in the year, we made a change to board policy around what we release in directory information because we were seeing an influx of other educational entities that were requesting our student information, including parent contact information, et cetera. And so we've further restricted that to protect our parents' information, so that we're not sharing that with people who are asking for it. And then again, there's a miscellaneous category there, about 11%. So there are a few challenges, and this probably isn't a surprise to anyone about going through public information requests, but they've continued to increase. So we have a higher volume that we're dealing with every year, and sometimes the delays are around ambiguity. We don't expect people to be an expert in how you submit a request or the language that you need to use to get what you want. And so we want to make sure that we're working with people and working through the process to ensure that we are giving them what they're wanting. And then also it can be very resource intensive, because searching for, collecting the records, doing redaction and preparation of them, it consumes staff time. Not only mine, but also the other people in other departments that are helping fulfill these requests as they come through, whether it's like pulling email queries or pulling employment records or whatever that might be. Once we collect those things, many times we have to scan them and redact them as appropriate. Some of the challenges that we faced, we've developed some things to help address those things. So one, with the influx in the amount, we have an updated tracking system. So we continue to streamline that, to make it better as we see opportunities to just make the tracking system more efficient. And there's also a few standard templates that have been developed for frequently asked questions and also confirmation of receipt of the requests. We get a lot, well, I would say a couple a month actually, emails or submissions that are not public information requests, or they may be like looking for their high school transcript or things like that. So we have template messages for all those things to tell people how to actually get what they're looking for if it's not a public information request. And then also staff training. I have had the opportunity to go just on years when there's a legislative session, so not like this in 2024, but in 2025, hopefully I'll have the opportunity to go to the Open Government Conference hosted by the Texas Attorney General. And in that session, it's a couple of days long in December usually, they go over all kinds of updates that might have come out of the legislative session, because this changes like anything else that we do. There's different requirements and mandates that can come out of a legislative session. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about what this looks like when people submit a request. So if you go to our website, under public information requests, this is what you see. It's this web page, and you can see at the bottom there's the options of how you can submit the request. If it's mailed to us or if it's brought in person, it's still scanned and emailed to a dedicated email address that we have to handle requests, which is publicinfo@lubbockic.org, which I think is on a later slide. It is right there. And once it's received, then each request is assigned an internal tracking number, and then that is provided to the requester with their confirmation of receipt. And that number is used to track internally, for example, with the Google Drive folder that's numbered with the same number to house the information that we provided. But in the event it has to be sent to the Attorney General's office, it also is used in that instance as well. I have a little video, and it may be kind of small on these screens, to just show you what the form looks like. And I typed in it in the video to show you what it might look like when I receive one. And so the very first column is just the date that it's received. And the reference number's in the first column, but the one I'm typing in. The date that it actually came in. And the second column is the 10-day marker, so that we know what date I'm aiming for to get it completed. Of course, the next few slides, the next few columns are their contact information, who it is, who they're with, their email address, and what the actual request is. And then there's a few columns there for sending to the Attorney General's office. Most commonly, the items that are sent to the Attorney General are around procurement requests, because any kind of pricing information in a bid process can be viewed as proprietary. And there's a process you can go through to send to the Attorney General's office to give those vendors who are part of that bid process the option to opt out of having their information released. And that's why that 10-day deadline is important there. But I note when it went, whether I sent it, the date it went, and you also have to send notification, not just to the requester, but also to the vendor, whether we provided records, what date we did that. And then the further columns I already slipped past my little video there, but the later columns are if there was a cost estimate, for example, how much it was, did we provide it, what date we provided that to them. So any part of that process is tracked. And then the final column is around notes. So if there's anything specific about it, or if, for example, there were no responsive records to the request, there's a column to add additional notes just for reference if we have to go back and look at it for any reason. Ooh, go right there. I'm gonna go back so you can see what that looks like. after that records provided column. Then it goes over to whether they were provided, the date they were provided, whether it was sent to our attorney, because there are some cases where I have to consult our attorney on certain pieces of it. And if I did that, what date I sent that to them. Then also the cost estimate, whether it was sent, if we got the refunds, and then any additional notes there, like I mentioned. Okay. And then once I've assigned the tracking number in the sheet, then this is the confirmation that someone will get. We've received your public information request on this date. It's been assigned this tracking number. We have 10 business days to respond. You can expect a response by this date, excluding holidays and on-business days. And I also link there to the public information calendar, which, as you know, we'll approve next meeting with the academic calendar, because in the last legislative session, the one before, the Texas legislature added a new requirement that we can't just say, like, on all the days that we're closed, that those are non-business days, and we're not going to count those in a public information request. We actually have to designate days throughout the year. We have 10 we can designate outside of state and federal holidays that can be non-business days, and we use most of those over the Christmas holiday just because you can't really fulfill them efficiently when people are not at work. So for example, over the holiday break, they were all non-business days except for January 2nd and 3rd. So the count of the days restarted after the break on January 2nd. Even though we weren't at work, it was not a designated non-business day. So this is their confirmation email. And then you can see here, I just took a screenshot of the folder as they come in, and I make a Google folder for that particular request so I can house the documents. Again, if I ever have to go back and look at what we sent or any other details, whether it was the response that I wrote or anything like that, is kept in a Google folder that is associated with that same tracking number. And just to end, of course, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. What we're hoping to do is just to continue expanding the webpage resources for additional guidance for people who are wanting records from Lubbock ISD. Because like I mentioned, it's not always public information requests. We have information on there right now about high school transcript requests, but we're getting a couple of different things, and we just want to make sure that we have information that's clear for people to understand so they can get what they're looking for. It's important, and our goal is always to acknowledge received requests within 24 hours. Sometimes they come in at odd hours. I got one at 9 o'clock last night, for example, so I saw it and I scheduled the notification to go out at 8 o'clock this morning so that they know that it's been received and that a number's been assigned. And just really working to quickly clarify requests that are unclear so that we can move forward to close them as quickly as possible, and then making sure that providing regular updates on complex requests to ensure that the requester knows that we're working on it. As I mentioned earlier, we are always reviewing the process to make sure that we are doing the best job we can and taking care of them in a timely manner, and certainly within the legal requirements of the Public Information Act. So we make changes to it. I made a few changes just even this year for 2025. And then also, in addition to those website resources, clear guidelines for what we're able to redact, generally speaking, and how we calculate cost estimates in the website resources. That stuff is in the Texas Public Information Act, but I mean, for just common things, we'd like to have that available for people to see. And then one thing I think that I've spoken to Dr. Rolo about would be good is that we haven't really had like a regular training for district administrators around what this is all about. When people ask for things, what that looks like, what people commonly ask for, and then what our role is in maintaining public records for requests. That's my presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about the public information request process.
Erin, will you share a little bit about how, when they ask for emails, how we search our email base, and then also talk about text messages?
Yes, of course. So for email requests, they have to, have a time frame that they're looking for. So we have to have a date range, because Technology Services handles that. And we also have to have search terms. So there has to be, just like you're doing a search for anything else, like on your computer or anything like that, we have to have some specifics to be able to do a search. And so we need, certain people, if they want emails, among certain people, dates and then topics, we can do that. Sometimes they want any communication within Lubbock ISD on certain keywords in a time frame, we can do that too, but our technology services department helps us with that. Text messages are a little different because they're self-reported. And so whenever we get a request saying we want text messages between these people or from this person regarding this topic, we ask for that person to take screenshots and submit them back to the office, because we don't confiscate phones and things like that. But we do work to help. I have a principal I'm working with right now with some text message requests about how to search for it and what to look for and what search terms to use whenever they're having to just search their own stuff to submit. I thought y'all would find this kind of funny, actually. I forgot to mention on the slide where I said that we had 99 requests last year. As of today, we have 6 so far in January, and we would have 7 if I counted the one I received this morning from a middle school student asking us to cancel school today. That was kind of funny. I sent it to the principal, and he got a good laugh out of it.
Thank you. This is super helpful, Erin. You have a really hard job, and I know how really hard your job is. And many times I know you're at the mercy of other departments who may not find that public information request a priority for them. I love your idea of the training, so they understand that you are legally bound to respond, and not just within 10 days, but really as the information is most readily available. And so I think that's a great idea also on text messaging, that's a legal requirement, and that people need to be responsive and careful. And so I love your training idea. That's really good. So
Thank you. Yeah.
I know I'd asked earlier about Granicus or one of those systems that is less manual, thinking that might take some burden off of you. Any interest and I know it's like, okay, that's a lot more expensive than a Google sheet, and I love how organized you've made this. Really good. Do you think there's any advantage for a less manual system?
I mean, certainly I think any automation makes it an easier process. The goal really was to just save as much money as we could, especially looking at our financial situation now. And previously in 2023 was the last year I really used our attorney to handle Attorney General submissions for procurement requests. So last year, the few that we had, I did those myself just to save the legal fees with using the attorney to submit those. And that was really just to see how much, as I went to training and expanded my knowledge, how much of it could I do myself? Of course, if I have a question, I can ask them, but how much could I do myself to save money? So that was really what it was about. I know what the city of Lubbock uses, and there's a couple different options. I mean, we're certainly open to look at those things, but I just was trying to be cognizant of cost.
Yeah, and boy, do we ever appreciate that.
Sure. Yeah.
But knowing too, sometimes a dashboard, like we have in processing hiring requests, it might help, just making that process less burdensome for you, because this is a lot of your time and your team's time. So anyway, thank you for what you do on that regard. And so anyway, I think anything we can do to streamline it and make sure those get in and out as quickly as possible, thanks.
Yeah, for someone who likes to just check things off the list, it's not the kind of thing you can check off the list sometimes very, very easily, just because sometimes there's maybe there's multiple departments involved, and they don't necessarily get closed in the same order we get them, depending on how complex they are. But like I said, it's really a privilege to handle it, because it's a very important responsibility to handle records for the district, and it's helped me expand my knowledge and my learning in the process as well. And I've appreciated the opportunity to go to the conference and have a chance to talk to people who work in the office and get clarification, and then training when there's changes, because it's important, just like with curriculum or other things, when there's legislative sessions, there are changes a lot of times to not just like the public information calendar, but about disclosure and other things that could impact the requests that we get.
You were very informative in how you did it and the way you showed it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So let me ask you, I wrote me a couple of notes. So you were talking about the evaluation. Did you pull your own rates out and the times that were stamped in? Did you do the evaluations, or did somebody else do them?
Or about what
The
specifically?
rates and the times and the rates, I guess the receipts and whatnot, when people came in, do you evaluate all that? Do you pull all that yourself? Do you have data of everything that's being pulled and what it's for? Do you have data on anything of that?
For like the individual requests that we
Yes,
receive?
yes.
Well, most of them, I think maybe just this year, we maybe only had one that was dropped off in person. Most of them were digital. But yeah, I mean, I keep all the records, anything that we've turned back in. And sometimes it's not even a document. It's just the information's like in the email, but I save
Yeah.
everything. So
Yeah.
yeah, we have everything.
So you have all that documentation. So if ever anything comes up, it's there, it's documented. Because, you know, there's been issues in all of this already. You and I both know that. So that's why I was asking you
Yes,
that
ma'am.
question. If you had pulled all that or somebody else had helped you pull out all that and the data that you said you were just talking about.
Oh, like the analysis? Yeah, no,
yes.
I did that on
Okay.
from the spreadsheet. I did it through the spreadsheet analysis of the tracking sheet that I keep.
Erin, how often would you say we do have to ask for more clarity or for people to provide more narrow search terms?
I would say normally that's when there's multiple parts of the request. You know, some of them are very straightforward, very easy, but we're working on one right now that has 6 different parts, and two of the six requests we need additional clarification. So frequently it's on more complex, and I would say it's maybe not even once a month that we have to do that. It just depends on how big or complex the request might be.
Yeah. So I heard you say that you're pretty much caught up on responding with the exceptions of ones you're working on now. Other than that, the ones from the past have all been taken care of. You have receipts on all that good stuff.
Yeah, anything.
Because I know that,
there are some. I mean, there's some from 2024 that were submitted over the Christmas break that don't have deadlines until we have one. I think the first one's due tomorrow that we're working on, but those are the only ones that are open right now.
We just need to make sure that we're efficient.
Absolutely, yeah. And I actually started this semester. That's part of my weekly meet with Dr. Rollo is making sure she has access to the sheet and she can see anytime.
That's good.
What's in
Documentation
there,
is important.
and the notes and anything like
Because
that.
I'd like to keep tabs on all that data. I think that's important, just like anything else.
Good questions.
The one thing, this isn't really for you, Aaron, but from the district standpoint, maybe more from Rick Dwayne, I think one thing that may handle some of these requests is if we get the budget, the audit, those things posted in a timely manner. Because, I mean, I think even back when we were talking to schools this fall with respect to just discussing the closure possibilities and financial, I'm not sure that we've been as efficient in posting our budgets and posting our audit and our audit amendments, just kind of having all those documents more available closer to the time where we're approving them as a board, I think might help y'all. I know some people ask for things that aren't normally posted regardless, and so maybe it doesn't handle all of them. But I think if we can make sure that we're posting specifically with respect to the financial, because I know a lot of people, that's the first thing they want to see. They want to see the budget, or they want to see whatever, and more than just like the summary budget, but the actual budget that we're approving, to where open book, they can see it, they can review it, whatever. Same thing with our audit. It's for the public's use, and so that may help some. I know that doesn't cover.
And it actually can, because if it's a web page that we control, then if the request is about information that we have on our website, I can just send them, this is where you access it.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I had one with the 6 parts. One of the responsive parts of it was, here's the board policy on this particular thing, and I can just link to, because if we maintain the website, then it's easy to just send them to the right place to get the information.
Anything else? Thank you very much,
Okay,
Erin.
thank you,
Appreciate your
Erin.
time. All right, an executive closed session will be held under the provisions of Texas Government Code Chapter 551. It is 9:57 a.m. and we are adjourned to closed session.